Hello wonderful person, this is Anton, and in today's 360 video we're going to explore 7 most likely places where we might actually find alien life in our solar system. Now let's begin our adventure on the first object here, and as you may have guessed, it's of course Mars. Now Mars has always been a very unusual object where we actually thought life does exist, or at least came from originally, and maybe then landed on Earth. This is actually a hypothesis known as Panspermia. Now, what we are interested about is, of course, some of the signs that we've seen that may indicate that Mars may have had life. So, for example, some of the rocks we've discovered on Mars may actually have similar structures that we have on Earth that usually are biological in origin. But one specific interesting thing about Mars is the so-called Horowitz Crater that actually seems to have unusual dark stripes that appear on the Martian soil in summertime, and we still don't really know what causes them. And although it's possible that it's actually some kind of a salty water that is forming these unusual stripes, it also is possible that it's caused by some kind of a bacterial life. And so hopefully one day we'll discover what actually is on Mars and possibly even land and establish a colony. Now the second object I wanted to explore is our other neighbor known as Venus. Now surprisingly, even though this planet is extremely hot, very pressurized, very dry, and has quite a lot of unusually strong atmospheric effects, including sulfuric acid that's part of the atmosphere, the upper layers of this planet seem to be very nice. As a matter of fact, some of the parts of atmosphere are very Earth-like, and we've even seen some signs of unusual chemistry going on in these upper atmosphere clouds, and possibly even signs of changes in atmosphere that may actually indicate microbial life living in the upper layers of Venusian atmosphere. And some of this chemistry involves a little bit of sulfur dioxide and carbon monoxide that actually might serve as some kind of a food molecule for these microbes. But specifically here, we actually have detected some unusual patterns of ultraviolet light that are actually surprisingly unpredictable in Venus, and may actually indicate that something is causing the unusual reflections on Venus, which actually might be created by some kind of a microbial life that lives in the upper clouds of Venus. So hopefully one day we'll send a probe or even establish some kind of a flying city colony that will learn more about this unusual planet. We now are going to go to Jupiter and look at some of its moons that are actually very interesting, and a lot of them do seem to have enough potential for us to explore and possibly even find life on them. And the first candidate is of course Europa. Now, first of all, Europa actually has even more water than Earth does, specifically liquid water, and all of this liquid water is protected by a very thick ice shell that essentially protects the water underneath from radiation and from inhospitable conditions that are present on the surface of Europa. And since even on Earth we have unusual creatures living in complete darkness near the hydrothermal vents that are present on the bottom of our own oceans, it's very likely that something like this might even happen on Europa. So if there is life on Europa, it might actually be powered by some kind of volcanic activity on the inside, and a lot of the heat generated on the inside of the moon might actually give enough energy to bacteria and to possibly even complex life to evolve and survive in the dark waters of this unusual satellite. And hopefully one day we'll be able to launch some kind of a submarine on this unusual moon and discover if this is all true. But while we're at it, we might as well send 2 more submarines. First of them might go to Callisto, yet another moon of Jupiter. And one of the reasons we might go to Callisto as well as Europa is because Callisto actually has a lot more hospitable conditions on the surface. So it too has a liquid ocean underneath, but it also receives a lot less radiation on the surface. And on top of that, all of this water is protected by a very thick shell of rock. So here it's not ice that protects it, but rock. So if life exists on this particular moon, it exists underneath all of this rock, and we'll probably have trouble reaching it, but it would be very safe and highly secure from all kinds of hazards that do come to visit this unusual satellite. And the next on the list is its neighbor Ganymede. And the cool thing about Ganymede is that on top of all of the protection from the rock on the surface, it is also protected by its own relatively significant magnetic field that protects it from some of the radiation that it receives both from Jupiter and from the Sun. So if there is life on Ganymede, it's protected, it's very highly sheltered, and it probably exists somewhere underneath the rocky layer. And now we're going to escape Jupiter and go to its neighbor Saturn, because Saturn too has a few objects for us to explore and possibly find life there. The first such object is of course Titan. Now Titan is very interesting because it's actually the only other object in our solar system that has atmosphere thick enough for us to actually live there and not pop like a balloon or be pressurized to the point where we actually implode like we would on Venus or something. So here, this particular satellite has only 1.4 atmospheres of pressure, but it is kind of cold. Nevertheless, it also has very unusual, interesting lakes and liquid oceans made up of ethane and methane, essentially liquid natural gas. And it even has rain, but this rain is hydrocarbon rain, so it does have slightly different effects on the surface. But what's interesting is that this is an active world and has quite a lot of chemistry going on there, and we've even detected some unusual chemistry mixtures and unusual complex molecules in the upper atmosphere of Titan that may actually indicate that life is happening there and that something is creating these unusual molecules. So maybe the next probe that visits this particular satellite will actually explore these molecules in more detail and possibly even discover the unusual life that may exist here. And the last object we're going to visit is another moon of Saturn known as Enceladus. Now, in 2005, NASA's Cassini spacecraft actually took a look at this particular satellite and discovered that it has quite a lot of unusual geysers of frozen water that come out from the surface, meaning that there's definitely liquid water and there's definitely some kind of a underground ocean that is kept warm by the gravitational interaction between Saturn and Enceladus. So essentially, just like Europa and just like the other satellites, this particular object may actually have some kind of a life going on underneath the ice shell, but on top of that, unlike Europa and unlike other satellites of Jupiter, this particular satellite of Saturn may actually be much easier to explore and to detect life around, because the molecules of water might actually spew out some of these bacteria, and we might be able to land and go inside the liquid water much easier than we would on Europa. So in other words, this might be actually our primary destination for the future exploration and for the future search of life after we possibly find or not find anything on Mars. And anyway, so that's all I wanted to talk about in this video, and I wanted to kind of explore the solar system in 360 and talk about these 7 unusual objects where one day we might discover some sort of life that has not originated on Earth. And anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. I appreciate all of your support. Please subscribe if you still haven't, share this video with someone who enjoys watching these videos, and possibly even leave a like if you enjoyed watching it. Consider supporting this channel on Patreon if you want to possibly support us and help us grow and help me basically produce better videos. I'll see you in the next video where we're going to learn something else educational and possibly play a video game. Give me later, guys. Bye bye.